I'm Fatheree.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Holly.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 65th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, where we talk all about Star Trek, old and new. And tonight we are talking about the most recent piece of Trek, that would be Star Trek Discovery's Season 2, Episode 13, Such Sweet Sorrow. This episode was written by Michelle Paradise and Jenny Lumet and Alex Kurtzman, and directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi. And I hope I say his name right because it comes up a lot. He is kind of like the producer of directors on Star Trek Discovery. He's kind of like the producer in charge of just like the cinematography, I think, and like the director side of the TV show.
Okay, he picks the directors?
I think he is more just in charge of like the overall like style of cinematography, just so it has like a type of continuity
Wouldn't
to it.
want those directors getting too creative.
Well, they do get pretty creative here, and
well, they have to make sure they check that upside down shot box, enough times.
It needs to be part of the Discovery drinking game, is take a drink every time the camera is showing you something upside down or at a weird angle.
That was, I thought I had watching this was like, oh, that's kind of like lens flare for JJ films or Kelvinverse films. They have upside down shots in Discovery.
Well, they do the lens flare also. And the writer, Michelle Paradise, who's going to be the co-showrunner with Alex Kurtzman in Season 3, and I'm pretty excited to see what she brings to the table. I think she's responsible for a little bit of the more character-focused stuff we've started to get in the latter half of the season.
She did the Arium?
Yes.
Yeah, episode 2?
Yeah, and so this is her second writing credit for Star Trek.
And both of those were really had a big, strong character element.
Yeah, it did feel like a little bit like too little, too late as far as making us care about some of those characters. Just imagine if we had that type of writing the entire show, how attached we would be to
the
secondary
this episode,
crew.
I think, did it well.
Yes. So these writers and director are also credited with next week's episode. So this really is like one big, long, 2-part episode that they've decided to split into one part this week, one part next week. But I kind of feel like the entire thing will eventually play out as one big movie-long episode. Yeah. But you might notice that Dave is not with us tonight. And that is because he is on an away mission to Louisiana to celebrate his niece's 21st birthday. So everyone can wish her a happy birthday in the comments if you like. And Dave should be rejoining us next week to talk about the season finale. But before we go ahead and give like our opening statements for this episode, I do have like one little piece of Star Trek news that I feel I need to bring up. And that is the Ira Steven Behr made documentary of Deep Space Nine, which I've been excited about for, I guess, years now. What We Left Behind is finally coming out this year. And on top of that, it has a lot of HD remastered footage from Deep Space Nine that we've never seen before. What makes that even sweeter is that they're going to have a theatrical release on May 13th in several cities across the country. So that's something that I already got my tickets, and I'm for sure looking forward to seeing DS9 not only in HD for the first time, but on the big screen. I think that's going to be really cool. And it might be the only time that ever happens. So
No, I'm definitely very excited about that as well. DS9 is my second favorite Star Trek, and I love behind the scenes stuff.
Yes, and it's my favorite. So
okay.
I've been really looking forward to that. But enough about DS9. We're here to talk about Discovery. So we'll just each go ahead and give a spoiler-free opening statement and just let you know our very general thoughts on this episode, and then we'll take a deeper dive. Holly, would you like to kick things off?
Sure. My impression of this episode was that it was confusing in spots, and that usually boiled down to technobabble. The tech was going to tech the something tech. But then characters come in and save the day by doing heroic things, and that's all we really care about. And so we just kind of ignore that technobabble and, okay, our characters are going to make the right moral decision and do a heroic thing. Good.
All right. Yeah, I really like this one, especially kind of the first half or 2/3. I really loved the feels, so many feels. So, yes, I found this quite enjoyable. I don't know if it's quite my favorite Discovery episode, but it's probably up there in the top 5. So.
And for me, I had a little bit of a mixed reaction in this episode initially. I was very tired Thursday night when I first watched it. And this is not the episode you want to watch if you're very tired, because there is a lot to keep up with. You not only like the technobabble, but they also go into a lot of details with like their big plan to defeat Control in the final episode. And if you're not paying attention, it's going to be hard to keep up with each one of those little beats. The show in general, I find, is better with a second viewing. I feel like that's true for a lot of episodes because it is so fast-paced, and they do drop little tidbits here and there that you need to keep track of sometimes. Upon rewatching this episode, I really dig what they're doing here, and I think they might be setting up something really incredible with the end of Season 2. I'm hoping that they pull it off and stick the landing. So I'll probably have more to say on this episode next week when I see what exactly it is that they're setting up. But this episode did have some wonderful, nostalgic Trek nerd porn with the Enterprise and with the recreations of that ship's interior. And I can't wait to talk about that. And I know this is going to rub some people the wrong way because it's not a photocopy of how the Enterprise looked during the cage, but there's so much here that I enjoyed, and I can't wait to get into all those details. But if y'all are cool with that, I'll just go ahead and go into our warp speed summary.
Engage.
So as you may recall, last week ended things with the AI nemesis Control and its fleet of Section 31 ships on its way to obtain the coveted sphere data from the USS Discovery. The crew now begin evacuation to the Enterprise so that they can destroy the Disco and prevent Control from getting the data and completing its evolution and destroying all life in the galaxy. As everyone hurries off from ship to ship, Burnham packs up the time crystal that Captain Pike acquired last week. But when she touches the crystal, she receives images of what appears to be the future. In this vision, we see flashes of the Enterprise struck with a torpedo, dead Discovery crew members, and the Disco Bridge under attack from the Control-possessed Leland, or Controlland as we call him. No time to worry about that now, as we have a ship to blow up. Saru and Pike activate the self-destruct and join the rest of the crew on the Enterprise. Pike assumes his rightful place in the captain's chair on a stunning Enterprise bridge and orders Number 1 to take them to a safe distance so they can watch the Discovery ceremoniously explode. However, when the dramatic clock ticks down to blowy-uppy time, nothing happens. Pike orders the Enterprise to shoot a few torpedoes at the Disco, but these do little to no damage as the Discovery's shields are now up for some reason. The most logical explanation seems to be that the somewhat self-aware sphere data on board the Discovery's computer has taken control of the ship and is protecting itself. Burnham, who was spectating from the Enterprise bridge, begins to have flashes of the future yet again. We make out a bit more of the details this time. It seems the Discovery is in a big battle with Saru in command on the bridge. The Enterprise can be seen from the Discovery's bridge with an undetonated torpedo lodged in her hull. The Discovery is rocked by an impact and is boarded by Leland, who makes his way onto the bridge, blasting away with a phaser rifle. He murders the bridge crew one by one until only Burnham remains. She tries to fight back, but Leland grabs a hold of her and puts a phaser to her head. He says goodbye and pulls the trigger. Snap back to reality in the present on the Enterprise bridge. Burnham says nothing of the vision, but she does suggest to our heroes that destroying the Discovery is not an option. Instead, she proposes the only way the sphere data will be safe from control is if they send the ship to the future. Apparently, they have the blueprints for Section 31's Project Daedalus suit and the resources to build a copy, but the design is tailored to Dr. Burnham's DNA. Good thing they have her daughter, Michael Burnham, on board. She will be able to use the Red Angel suit, powered by their time crystal, to open a micro wormhole into the future. The Discovery should then be able to follow her through time and escape the clutches of control. Only problem: it takes a supernova to power the time crystal, and supernovas are hard to come by. Spock and Pike theorize that a red burst might show up to guide their way. In fact, Spock even believes the red bursts could all be from a future Michael Burnham trying to communicate with them. And speak of the devil, or angel in this case, the Enterprise then detects a new red burst. The control fleet is only 5 minutes away, though, so it's a good time to leave. Pike takes the Disco crew back on board the Discovery, and they spore jump to the location of the red burst. The Enterprise takes off to the same destination at much slower warp speed. And that destination is none other than the planet Zahia, home of the Queen, Her Serene Highness, Mihani Ika Hale Ka Po, or Po for short. In case you don't recall, that's Tilly's buddy she made friends with in the short trek Runaway. And Poe knows a thing or two about crystals. She figured out how to recrystallize dilithium. She beams up to the ship to eat ice cream and help their endeavor to recreate the Red Angel. Sure enough, she comes up with a way to use her dilithium incubator to power the time crystal with energy from the spore drive. The drawback being that they will not be able to use the spore drive in the coming battle. Also, this rapid charge technique will cause the crystal to burn out after one use. Burnham will be able to take the Discovery to the future, but she will not be able to come back. There is a lot of uncertainty, but hopefully she will be able to get the ship into the future and arrive at Mama Burnham's home base at Terrelysium. It's a risky mission, but there appears to be no other way. The crew begin charging the crystal, and Burnham says her goodbyes. She even gets a visit from her foster parents, Sarek and Amanda. The two come to check up on Burnham because Sarek felt a disturbance in their father-daughter Katra connection. Michael shares a teary-eyed final farewell with them, and Sarek and Amanda depart. Michael reviews some of Mama Burnham's logs in preparation for donning the Red Angel suit 2.0. She's visited by Tilly, who informs her the Discovery crew have decided to remain on board the ship and complete the mission with her. Excluding Ash Tyler, that is. He has a one-on-one conversation with Burnham and explains he'll be going back over to the Enterprise when they arrive. After all, someone has to keep Section 31 in line. The Disco crew write goodbye letters to their loved ones in a very emotional montage. After all, parting is such sweet sorrow. And Pike, back in his badass-looking gold uniform, says goodbye to the Discovery crew, leaving Saru in command. The Enterprise finally catches up to the Disco with a bunch of battle-ready shuttlecraft and tactical flyers. Control is only minutes behind them. On the Discovery, Reno, Stamets, and Tilly are feeling the pressure. The crystal is charging too slowly. They're using a cage around the crystal to prevent it from giving people mind-blowing visions of the future. But that cage is interfering with the charging process. Reno bravely volunteers to stay in the makeshift crystal charging room and continue charging the crystal by herself with no cage in place. Tilly and Stamets leave her to it, and we get more of the future glimpses, a torpedo lodge in the Enterprise, and the control end attack. Captain Pike beams over to the Enterprise along with Ash Tyler. Everyone on both ships get to battle stations. The control fleet arrives with weapons ready, and cut to black, because we got a cliffhanger. The end, for now. So, how did the two of y'all feel when we got to that cliffhanger? Were you like on the edge of your seat and disappointed we got a week to wait to see what happens?
Well, I mean, yes, my emotions were kind of like...
You screamed.
I was about to say my emotions were kind of like when we got to the end of Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War, and because I somehow had missed the news that this was part one of a movie, and so I was not very happy at the moment I saw that in the theater, and I kind of felt that again here. And, I mean, granted, I'm going to get to see part 2 of this next week.
You didn't have to wait a year.
And then I'll soon be seeing Avengers Endgame, so... But yeah, I felt some of those same emotions.
Brian, what about you?
I mean, I knew it was that the finale was almost certainly going to be some sort of two-parter thing. So exactly where the cliffhanger was going to be, I didn't know, but it didn't surprise me when okay, that's the cliffhanger. So yeah, I was like, oh, that's a good cliffhanger. That's exciting. I like it. I approve. 2 thumbs up. So that was my response to that particular end. What was yours?
Well, I kind of had my eye on the clock, I guess.
I had totally lost track of time.
I kind of felt like it was winding down to the end. I was expecting to see some combat, some ship on ship action, because I typically avoid the trailers, but this had. The trailer for this episode did show off some of the Enterprise interior. Mm-hmm. I wanted to check that out, so I actually watched some of the trailer, and we do see combat in the trailer, but it's those future visions. Yes. So I did kind of keep waiting for that to happen, but then I figured out oh no, we're not actually going to get into the battle until next week. This episode did so much setup though of explaining everything that's going on that I think next week we're going to get a pretty long battle sequence. I would kind of be disappointed if that doesn't happen.
I expect with all this setup that now that all the dominoes are in a row, I would expect that next week will be all the dominoes falling over. Just boom, boom, boom. This happens, and 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 just this huge chain reaction that doesn't stop at all. At least that's how I would have what I would have aimed for if I was crafting this season, is that would just be one giant 50-minute roller coaster, or however long they are.
I know that originally Star Trek Discovery Season 2 was planned to be a 13-episode season. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this episode and the next episode have the same writer and director credits. Mm-hmm. So I do kind of wonder if this was one episode initially, and then they were like, oh my god, this is so long, we're gonna have to split this into 2.
I could see that. I mean, the goodbyes, which I loved, there was a lot of time spent on goodbyes. you know that's the sort of stuff that could have been much shorter, and then when they realized they had more than one episode, they said, well, what else can we do with this, and where can we expand it and make things more interesting and dig deeper.
And I feel pretty confident that is Michelle Paradise's doing. I think she's going to be the person that adds the character focus to Discovery, or more than just adding character focus. She's expanding it to people beyond Burnham, Tilly, Stamets. It's expanding to the secondary characters.
Yes.
Not unlike what Michael Piller did when he came on to the Next Generation and started adding more little character moments.
Yeah, which I think was the key to making the Next Generation great, was realizing you have these amazing actors. You really just need to plop them into a bad situation and then have them grind it out and talk to each other and angst a bit for 30 minutes and then technobabble your way out at the end. And it's perfectly satisfying. So,
those goodbye letters that we mentioned earlier, we get a few tidbits from some of the supporting characters on there. We learned that Detmer might have a love interest named Tazzy, just based on the dialogue in the letter.
Or a sibling.
Yeah, Stamets definitely has a sibling, because he's talking about, like, oh, you always understood Mom and Dad better than me.
Yeah.
You know, you were really the favorite. And I don't know if it's a brother or sister, but one or the other. And Owasakan was, if you remember, like, her origin that we learned about at the beginning of the season, she came from, like, a Luddite colony.
Yeah.
So she's talking about, like, I know you didn't approve of what I did. And it's like, what, like joining Starfleet and living with technology.
The most advanced tech available.
So that was, like, little interesting insights. So I think the biggest hot topic for this episode is the Enterprise herself, the interiors, and just seeing that ship in action. Brian, you seem amused by that.
Well, I guess I did enjoy this. Unlike, whereas I kind of almost felt like the episode with the Telosians would have been better maybe without the Telosians. I absolutely was like, no, this episode was definitely enhanced by the presence of getting to see the Enterprise inside and out.
I really enjoyed that. I was impressed with the way they made it look so new, but you could still definitely tell that was the classic Enterprise. So I was very impressed with what they did there.
Yeah, and a lot of that, like, those corridors are redresses of the Discovery corridors. But, like, adding that red in there, I've always said that the Discovery sets, and I like their design, but I've always said that they come off as too sterile. And I wish that they would add some color to it. Yeah. You know, seeing them do that to create the Enterprise interior, it proves that point that I was always trying to make, that these designs will pop more if you just put some color on there.
I guess the reason I was laughing is it's still, while I loved it, it wasn't really my favorite part of the episode, but I did love it. It was great. I thought it was very interesting to see how much different it looked than Discovery. I was actually surprised at how much they changed from Discovery. Different colored graphics, different sound effects, and those wonderful retro sound effects.
Yeah, like before we get into the bridge, I just want to talk about, like, you know, going from, like, the corridors where they add the red, but they also have, like, that red grating.
Yes, the grating. They had the grating.
The original series. We follow Captain Pike into a turbo lift that has a handle.
Yes.
Like on the original series. And then when we get to the bridge layout does match that TOS, you know, circular bridge. Captain's in the middle. He can see any console, any display. Yeah. We have Sulu's little flip-up visor is at number 1 station. There's an astrogator between the helm and navigator. The science station had, like, a little Spock thing.
Oh, did it? Yeah. I was looking. I was so much going on, but I was like, do they have the Spock thing, the little viewer on Spock station? But
most importantly, they just added color.
Yeah.
And when you would have, like, those close-ups of a character in the center of the bridge, and then, like, the background was kind of, like, out of focus and just blurry, but you have, like, all, like, those yellows and greens and all those lights in the background. It felt like TOS aesthetics.
Yeah. I thought it was an excellent reimagining, especially given that they, you know, clearly decided we're going to turn Discovery's bridge into the Enterprise bridge, given that that's where their starting point was. I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, yeah, okay, somebody out there is probably saying, all you could do is go to the New York where they shoot all those Star Trek Continues, and I'm sure they'd love to have their sets on the big screen, but
go to Ticonderoga.
Yeah, but that's never going to happen.
No, here's my thing, though, is as much as I love the look of the Enterprise interiors, I do understand the canon freak, continuity freak concern about how, like, it's kind of hard to believe this will look like the TOS bridge in a few years, or like the TOS corridors in a few years. I mean, you know, in my head canon, I was going to tell myself, there's like a refit before Kirk got it. And
see, I've just given up and said, okay, it's like Roddenberry said in the novelization of the motion picture, we're looking at the 60s episodes are dramatic recreations of what Kirk's missions actually were. And Roddenberry said it, so it's good enough for me.
And I do kind of feel like I'm looking a gift horse in the mouth, because I really enjoy Discovery, and I enjoy this episode and the way that it showed off the Enterprise here. But I think it could be better if these Enterprise sets, I kind of wish that from the beginning this is what Discovery had looked like. If, like, Discovery had a bridge that looked like that.
Yeah, well,
that might have been a good thing.
And then, when they showed the Enterprise, I would like it to be, like, a little bit closer to the TOS style. Maybe, like, somewhere between what they have going on here and then the sets that they recreated for the Enterprise episodes in A Mirror Darkly.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be exactly like that, because this is, like, a few years earlier, and that shit wasn't even the Enterprise, so...
Yeah.
If anything, it kind of looked too accurate, but you'd think it would be the one who have, like, a little bit of variation. But, yeah, not only you get the bridge, we get that conference room, and it had, like, that cool monitor with, like, the three screens.
In Enterprise?
No, well, yeah, but we also got it on this episode.
Okay, yes.
The next episode might even show us a few more interiors, I don't know, but...
Yeah. They mentioned that they finally got rid of all the holo projectors. What exactly, remind me again why the holo projectors are going away on Enterprise?
So, in the first episode, when Enterprise was going to go investigate the Red Burst, and then they had, like, a ship-wide malfunction, they kind of didn't bring that up again until number 1 visited the Discovery, was talking to Pike, and said that, they suspect the holograms are part of that issue. And so he said, strip out all the holograms. And he says that he never liked them anyways. They remind him of ghosts.
This could fix a continuity issue. This is why the holodecks have their own power reactors on Voyager. Because holograms and Starfleet systems don't like each other. So the holodecks on Voyager need to be completely independent of everything else and use their own incompatible power supplies. That makes a disturbing amount of... Well, it doesn't make sense, but it fits really neatly. It maps.
Yeah.
It maps and locks really nice.
The puzzle pieces fit together.
Yes. It's a silly puzzle, but it does fit. So...
Yeah. But I do like that there's not going to be any more holograms on the Enterprise, because I wish there was no holograms on the show at all. So
I'm fine with them, whatever.
Any hologram removal, I'll gladly accept.
I like them, but whatever, I can live without them.
I mean, video chat never seems to be as popular as people think it will be. I mean, occasionally we use it, but I noticed that I never use FaceTime and Google Hangouts except on certain occasions that are planned ahead.
Yeah, people tend to text each other now instead of replacing, like, phone calls with like face-to-face video calls. We kind of, like, replace them with text messages. So instead of using technology to make us, like, more connected, we kind of use it to, like, make us less connected.
Yes.
Yeah, it's sort of like, who wants to, like, have to put on makeup and get dressed to make a phone call?
But why make a phone call when you can just fly all the way from Vulcan to the Discovery and visit someone in person and then leave only a few minutes later, like Sarek and Amanda did?
Yeah.
But, come on. They think if Michael is permanently leaving for the future, which is what they believe is happening, it is realistic that they would haul ass to get there on time and say goodbye to her, because that's their last chance, and that they'll ever see her is what everybody's believing in that scene. So that makes a certain amount of sense that you would do that.
True, but I think you could accomplish the same with Sarek having another long-range mind meld conversation, like he did with Burnham in the series premiere.
They said they tried that, or said something about trying to reach out to her Katra, and they couldn't, and that's why they came in person.
Yeah, but the writers could have, like, not written that. They could have wrote instead of writing it didn't work, they could have wrote it worked.
Yeah, I guess I thought it was convenient that Sarek and Amanda can get to Discovery before Section 31 does. Even though everyone's racing to Discovery, that Sarek can get there first. was like, it's a little convenient,
I mean,
but the scene was good enough when they got there that I didn't care. I was like, fine, the scene justifies whatever hand wavy you have to do to bring it about.
I had it wrong. They reached out. They knew through the Katra that they needed to say goodbye to her, and then Control futzed with the text, and they couldn't because of the tech. And so they had to come in person. Right,
yeah, because the long-range communications are down, but they can do ship-to-ship communication. I think that was more of an explanation of why it's only the Discovery and the Enterprise versus all these Section 31 ships.
Yeah, well, it makes sense that if they shut down the entire subspace network, or at least commandeer it and filter out any messages they don't like, then that would your transmission range is what, 22.65 light years according to the Next Generation tech manual, and it might even be shorter back in the 23rd century. So if you can't use the relays, then you only have a range of less than 24 light years that you can talk to anybody. And if there's nobody friendly in that range, you're kind of stuck.
You would think you would be able to tell Sarek, they're like, hey, by the way, you should probably go get some help, because we're about to have to fight 30 ships. They established last week that there's 30...
Yeah. Almost the entire fleet of Section 31 is 30 ships. I thought, oh, that's cute.
Yes, do they have 31 ships?
And is that the one that they went, Michael and... Spock went and dealt with? Is that the missing one? That's why it's not 31 ships.
Yeah, I wonder if next week in the inevitable battle sequence, if we'll actually be able to count 30 ships.
They got the money for it. I'm sure they'll be there somewhere.
But yeah, to me that did feel like a little shoehorned of Sarek and Amanda just showing up and then leaving, and they're only there for a few minutes because they're talking about how the Enterprise will be here and so many minutes before then.
It was probably a version of it where they just called or telepathically called, and the writers just said, screw it, these are great actors, we're going to stick them in the same room together so they can do their thing.
But if Michael Burnham really was lost forever at the end of the season, I would think, oh, well, yeah, that was very appropriate that she had that final farewell. I don't think that'll happen, though.
No.
Yeah, but the characters don't know this in the moment, so that's true to who people would be. If you think that you're going to have a final goodbye to somebody, you're going to act that way.
Sure, the characters don't know that, but, I mean, the writers didn't have to write that Sarek could even, get that disturbance in the Force, we'll say, from Michael, so... It did feel a little out of place with the urgency of everything else.
They had to turn it into a two-parter.
But, yeah, so throw in some filler.
Well, I wouldn't call it filler. That was my favorite stuff. Actually, was all that goodbye stuff.
It is cool to see Sarek apologize for not being the best parent because he's not.
I did feel, you want to talk about a thing that felt slightly off to me was and I'm always going to be there for Spock. I mean, I'm not because he doesn't want me to, and we have to maintain continuity with Journey to Babel. But I'm going to be there because that's what this scene requires me to say.
Yeah, that was to explain why we don't see him and Spock together, even though they're both there on the ship. Yeah. Because as Journey to Babel establishes that it's been years since they've spoken to each other.
Yeah, that was the part that bugged me more than they flew there. It was just that felt awkward.
I'm just saying, if you can fly there and back that quickly, you can probably go get them some help. But go.
How quickly was it? They go to the planet from Runaways with an X. Zahia. They go there to build the suit. And, well, it all happens in a matter of minutes on screen. I was like, did they just spend a month building that time suit? Is there anything that indicates that that all happened in a matter of hours, or did they spend a month in orbit of that planet building this gadget?
And all that time, the Enterprise didn't think to go to Earth and go get
Well, Enterprise was hauling ass to get to them. It spent the whole time trying to get to them.
Did they say somewhere it was 10 hours away?
Well, eventually, but
they gave an ETA for Enterprise, and it said, "Oh, by the way, Control is 10 hours behind Enterprise."
It was 10 minutes
or 10 minutes.
Yeah, that seemed like a really long 10 minutes.
But before it was actually less. It was 8 minutes.
You checked, but you had to check because it felt weird, right?
Yeah. But when they leave their initial meeting point where the episode began with where the two ships were hooked up with those weird accordion corridors with force fields.
I was like, that looks more dangerous than transporters.
But when they figured out that blowing up the Discovery is not an option, the Control was 10 minutes away then. So it kind of makes sense that like they stayed, assuming like the Control ships move around the same speed as the Enterprise.
I would always the Enterprise is supposed to be the queen of the fleet and super fast, but yes, whatever in the long run. Plus, they're scattered around, so they can kind of close in from all sides.
But yeah, we've also seen like shuttlecrafts that just like go all over the place at warp speed in Discovery. So it seems weird that they don't have any way to get any help like from. It's just the Discovery and the Enterprise on their own.
Well, I guess there's also, there's some question. I guess Sarek, you think they would listen to him. But I could kind of see why the rest of the fleet might actually be actively being corrupted by Control to being given false information. Their computers could be infected, so the messages aren't even getting there. You know, yeah, you're right. It seems like Sarek could have done something, gone to personally visited the president and said, "Hey, this is a problem, and I'm Sarek. You need to listen to me."
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It probably would have been better. It would have solved a lot of these concerns just to not have that scene, or just have that scene be like done through telepathy or through holographic communication or something. But
it was such a good scene.
Yes. I thought I was okay with it, the contrivance, just because the scene was worth it. What bugs me is nobody's even suggested just going down to the computer core of Discovery with a phaser rifle and going bam, 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 bam. There, no more sphere data.
And maybe they tried that off screen and the ship just like raised a force field.
I just a quick line of dialogue saying that would have been fine. I would have okay, they did try to just smash it with a hammer, and that didn't work. The other thing is, why can't they use the spore drive to permanently escape Section 31 or the control end?
Because wherever they go, they said it will follow.
But they can jump 50,000 light years. That gives them over 50 years lead time to come up with a plan.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, just go from like one end of the galaxy to the other end, back and forth.
Yes.
Can't Discovery, the spore drive, kind of travel in time? Didn't they travel in time last season?
Only accidentally.
Yeah.
It might be hard to replicate reliably. But yes, it did. They don't even bring that up, that they did actually jump months ahead?
9 months.
9 months. So they can take the ship a little bit far forward in time with spore drive, albeit it sounded like it was a big pain in the neck, and I kind of get why they don't want to do that if there's any other plan.
Yeah, but I do get their concern that if there's 30 ships, I don't know, maybe it'll just like start sending them out in like all directions, and it would be hard to escape that.
If you could go 50,000 light years, it's not hard to escape.
Yeah, but then the threat's still out there.
Yes.
Like you have a lot of time to deal with it, but
that's why I was like, did they spend a month at Zal? I could totally believe they spent a month at Zal building the suit. Now, maybe there was a line I missed that clearly indicates they were only there for 2 days or 12 hours.
Yeah, I think they were only there for like a few hours, but...
I mean, do they say that?
It seems that way on the show.
Because I kind of feel like it could have been, things make a lot more sense, Sarek and Amanda being able to get there and all that, if they were there longer. And then it explains, oh yeah, we can't just build a time machine in 12 hours. No, it took us a month to build that time machine. So, but whatever.
We also have the character from Runaway, Poe, return. I'm surprised that they did that. I honestly didn't think we would ever see that stuff in season 2. Even though they have said that the short treks will be connected to this season, I wasn't really expecting them to use stuff from each one of those episodes.
No.
But it looks like we're going to get some Calypso tie-ins, possibly.
Quite probably.
So, and I want to talk about that at the end. We'll kind of talk about like our predictions. But I didn't like the short trek Runaway, and I kind of thought that the writing in that was a little weird, like the dialogue between Tilly and Poe, and it felt like very cheap and not very thought out. At the end, like, we see her beam Poe away. We have no idea, is she beaming down to a planet or to a ship?
Yeah, I kind of wondered where Poe is going. I'm like, how do they... Are they by Zahia at that moment? But then in this story, when they get to Zahia, that seems to be a new and different thing. So I wondered about that. I also thought it was interesting what Poe said about her people, and that seemed like a concept that almost deserves its whole episode to explore. But her people being created or coming into being with her planet, because that kind of, I mean, that has all kinds of implications. That's not how we, I mean, I'm certainly not a scientist, but
that's not how evolution works.
Yeah, that was going to be my thing, is I don't think that's how evolution works. That does sound like how some kind of creationism works. So how did Poe and her planet come into being? And her planet is rich in this one mineral that everybody needs, the dilithium crystals, and how does that play in? So I kind of thought that Zahia maybe deserved its own fully developed episode to go with these unique concepts.
It was certainly very odd, and the audience, they make it clear they know that it's very odd, because Tilly starts to say, that's bull, you know, the planet would be too hot. So, I actually, on second viewing, I Runaway was just kind of okay the first time. Watching it the second time through, I was like, okay, there's definitely some explanations I'd like about this and this, but overall, I actually thought it was quite a bit fun the second time through.
I did find myself enjoying the use of the character Poe a lot more in this episode. Some of her dialogue still came off as kind of out of place to me.
I loved her giving the ice cream to Giorgio.
That
was amazing.
I love that Giorgio is like so evil that she was like disgusted by the ice cream.
Yeah. No, somebody needs to give Giorgio a bowl of ice cream or something like that every week. That would be great.
And it's kind of a silly idea.
Just look at her and go, "Wow, you're so skinny. Eat some ice cream."
That's
kind of silly to think about. Like, oh yeah, like this bad guy is so evil that she won't even like ice cream,
But it's exactly how they play her. It's exactly how they write her.
No, I like it. Well, speaking of Giorgio, it's weird that she shows up on a ship because they're like, Giorgio's arrived. Because like, well, where was she? Like the last time we saw her, she beams up from ESOP 4 to the Discovery. Yeah. Apparently she left at some point, but didn't go into a Section 31 ship because she didn't get blown out of an airlock. But she makes it back to the Enterprise and the Discovery. I don't know. I would like an explanation.
She was only contracted to appear in so many episodes this season. So they had to get rid of her for that one episode.
That's the explanation.
I don't know. But, it felt weird.
I laughed at the ice cream. I also laughed when they're sitting around the table trying to plan what to do. And she says, why don't you just create a supernova? And when they're like, no, we can't do that. That would be like super dangerous. People will die if we start blowing up stars. And she says, I thought you said there was no bad ideas.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was a hilarious line. My response would have been, well, can't you create a supernova at a star that doesn't have any inhabited planets?
Well, they said it would cause a destruction out numerous light years, which is scientifically correct.
And we also saw it in Star Trek Generations when we see trilithium shot into a star.
Yes. And we see what happens with supernovas in Star Trek 09 as well. It blew up Romulus and stuff, and that wasn't in the same system.
Well, that was an insane supernova.
Well, yes, but the point is, it's been well established that just blowing up stars can have a collateral damage to other stars.
Yeah, you don't want to do that flippantly.
Yeah.
Like the former emperor suggested.
I did like later on, she's like, you don't have to do this. Get lost in the future. Giorgio's talking to Michael. She's, we, and at first I was like, well, what's the alternative? Oh yeah, she did come up with an alternative. She did come up with an alternative that would have worked fine, except for all the collateral damage. But the Empress is fine with blowing up all these planets just to make sure Michael can come home.
I have had some issues. I've had some issues I've been vocal about with them kind of softening her character because I think it is crazy to redeem a character who's been like that evil and that nasty. But I have accepted that she is sincere in her feelings for Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, evil people can still have feelings of loyalty to those they care about.
Yes.
Yeah, Khan loved his wife.
Yeah.
Dukat loved his daughter, I guess, maybe, but...
When he remembered to, yes.
But let's talk about Pike in this episode. You know, parting is such sweet sorrow, and Pike is leaving the Discovery ship and apparently leaving the Discovery show. So that's heartbreaking.
It is to me. I have to admit that as I watch him, I don't know if he's my favorite captain, but he's probably the sexiest captain. He's the one that I would most want to, you know, if I were gonna, yeah.
you want to mount Anson Mount?
Yes.
I like Pike. I like Pike.
You like the Pike.
Yeah, I guess so. I like.
You mount the mountain like the Pike.
I like him a lot. He's a very likable.
He's made a hell of an impression, and only this is the 13th episode with him.
Yeah.
But really, like immediately after the first episode, I think he had already won over a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially after the second episode, New Eden, which was very Pike centric.
Yeah.
To the point to where me and Dave were concerned that he was going to steal the spotlight. They did kind of back off of him a little bit after that. But then, you know, we had that really cool stuff with him last week when he got the time crystal. And it was really cool seeing him in such a leadership position here. His farewell to the crew was cool and inspiring and everything you want from a Starfleet captain. And I love him being back in his proper gold uniform.
Yes.
Which he should have worn the entire season, damn it.
I want to know where Spock's uniform is.
No, that's next week.
Spock's uniform. Spock being out of uniform is what bugs me, not Pike.
Next week, we'll see Spock clean shaven in a blue shirt.
Probably, I believe you. So, yeah, I like Pike a lot. He is, I think, Anson Mount is my favorite Captain Pike of the three actors we've seen.
Yeah, mine too.
Four, I guess, if you count the guy in the chair. So,
technically fourth actor.
Yes.
And I think I hate saying this so early into the Anson Mount tenure as Pike, but just after one season, I do really feel like he might be my second favorite captain, with my favorite being the Emissary, of course, as the super DS9 fan.
I actually kind of agree with you. I think Sisko might be my favorite captain too. I mean, Picard has the voice. I mean, you can't beat the voice. But I like Sisko's style as a captain a lot.
I mean, he rebuilt a destroyed planet, fought and won a war, ascended to godhood, being a single parent father the entire time. I mean, that's hard to top, but...
And he could cook.
And he could cook. Yes, and he could cook. Real good food, it looked like, too.
But yeah, I really like Sisko, and I really like Deep Space Nine. But then I think one of my all-time favorite shows is Babylon 5. So.
Yeah, how does he stack up against Sheridan? There we go. So
DS9 is the B5 of Star Trek.
That's true.
So I just kind of mentally lump B5 in with Star Trek, but we're drifting a bit. Yeah. I was gonna go with some. Yes, I have to admit I love Kirk. I love Picard.
Yeah, they're hard to beat.
Yes. I will say, everyone says, "Oh, you can't do the cheesy old Star Trek. It doesn't work today. We need grim, dark, flawed characters." I think Anson Mount's Pike proves that is not true. If well written and well acted, you can bring out those larger than life, more perfect than life characters from the Next Generation and from the old 60s Star Trek and put them in a show and it can still work.
See, yeah. I kind of agree on a deeper level. I think that the reason we became so comfortable with dark TV, a lot of us, is because for a while we thought we kind of saw our modern world as being good, and we're looking for the dark side to everything. And then we kind of near the end of 2016 had a big political upheaval. And so I think the reality that the world is not a good place is more on a lot of people's minds now. And so when we realize the world is not a good place, we want more good characters. And so I think there's going to be a change in entertainment as our culture changes the pendulum will kind of swing back towards good and wholesome. And then as we become more comfortable in the world and it doesn't seem like a scary place, those pendulum may swing back to dark and gritty.
I think you might be onto something. But I mean, if we can't have a positive, optimistic world in our fantasy, we're not going to be able to have it in reality if we can't even imagine it. So.
Well, and I think that's part of the thing is I think when we feel really good about when we feel like we're really at home in a place in this world and that we can do things in this world, then we can spend a lot more time criticizing everything that's wrong with it and bring out the negative. But when the world seems a little less certain and a little less hopeful, then you want your fantasy to inspire you by showing you what we could be.
Right on. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about the romantic relationships in this episode. We have a bit with Culber and Stamets, where it kind of looks like they're possibly finalizing their breakup.
It's not finalized.
I hope not. I want to see them together.
I think they're just trying to set us up to make things hard for them, so that later on they get back together.
Yeah, they have to work through some things and milk that.
I think they think it's over. Well, they think it's over.
I don't.
But from a storytelling point of view,
I agree. From a storytelling point of view, it's probably not over, but we have to earn that for them to get back together.
And Culber says he's going to join the Enterprise, and Stamets says he's done with ships, but then he decides to go into the future on a ship.
Yeah, that was a question I had. How many people are going? Is it like most of the crew or just like the bridge crew that are going to the future? I wasn't entirely clear what percentage of the crew is going into the future.
They didn't specify, but it's also interesting that Spock, of all people, is staying on the Discovery instead of returning to where he belongs on the Enterprise. We know that he's going to get there eventually, though.
Yeah,
so.
Well, yes.
These people aren't going to stay stuck in the future.
Yeah. No, of course not. I do want to say the whole goodbye sequence and all of that. I loved that. I cried. The moment where they all say, no, we're going to come with you. I was like, oh my God, that's so mushy sweet. That I love found family stories. I love stories about people who come together and they're not blood relatives, but they make a family. I love those. That's one of the things I love most about classic Star Trek and The Next Generation and DS9 and all of those. It's
like when you steal the Enterprise to go rescue Spock.
Yes, and I love that. That's the best thing about Star Trek 3 is that, no, of course we're going to go rescue Spock because we're family.
Well, and I kind of looked at it, I'm like, well, then they could strand them 950 years in the future and spend a couple of episodes next season of the crew figuring out a way to get back to the present. That's totally an option now. We bring all the main characters along and Pike says goodbye and we know he's leaving at the end of the season. Yeah, this is totally an option that we know that Discovery could get lost somewhere in the future and they have to work on coming back. Yeah. And maybe they don't come back. Maybe that's why there's no spore drives mentioned or developed is because Discovery gets lost somewhere in the future and so now the spore drive, it's not around anymore.
Yeah, let's not do that anymore. But the other romantic relationship that we see on display is between Tyler and Burnham. When she says goodbye to him, when she goes on the dangerous mission to supposedly never return again.
Yeah.
He says that he has to stay behind to try to keep Section 31 in the gray area, or else they might create another mess like this. That is kind of suggesting he might be in the Section 31 show if he's going to stay involved with Section 31, which that's what I want him on there because I think he's an actual decent person that I can cheer for.
Yeah.
No, I still think that keeping Section 31 in the gray area is kind of a hopeless cause, and pretty much you just need to eliminate it.
Maybe that's how the show will end. Maybe that'll be like the moral of the story. But when he beams over to the Enterprise with Pike, he says, "I got to go take care of something." And he's like, "I hope you trust me because there's something I got to do before this gets started." I think he's going to go get L'Rell and come back with at least one, maybe more Klingon D7s, and
that's where we're going to get episode D7 Attack.
Yeah, as Dave had hoped for. So I think we'll get some. And I love that idea.
Next week's just going to be 40 minutes of D7s fighting Section 31 ship. That's all it'll be.
On paper, I think that's brilliant of having the Matt Jeffries Connie design and the Matt Jeffries D7 design teamed up together, just going bonkers fighting all these Section 31 robot ships that you can just, blow up left and right. I think it's weird that we have all these like shuttlecraft and tactical flyers, I believe they were called.
Yeah, well, it's they have too much money. We could also do this. That'll only take $1 million. We've got,
We're going to dial up the spectacle for this battle.
Yeah.
Even though they supposedly like overspent in season 2, but
now this isn't the first time though. They brought in a bunch of armed runabouts when the first Dominion battle. They brought in armed runabouts for that one, and we see fighters, little fighter things working in the Dominion War too. So it's not unheard of.
But I kind of think those are weird. It feels more Star Wars than Star Trek when you do that.
I spent enough time looking at the tech that I'm like, okay, you can probably one-shot the Enterprise or a Dominion ship can probably one-shot most of those shuttles pretty easy, but they can carry a torpedo, and even if they can't, the launch, and according to the tech manual, the launch range is like diddly squat, but if you can fly up there, launch 1 or 2 torpedoes, and that's your missiles, zoom, boom, then you're done, but you're useless for the rest of the...
You're basically a kamikaze pilot.
Well, no, if you're fast and maneuverable, you can get in there and get out.
I think we're going to see a lot of those blow up next week.
Oh, I'm sure.
So red shirts and all of them.
But yes, I after looking at it now, I can't see how you can mount enough phasers on a shuttle to be worthwhile in a starship combat, but you could mount torpedoes.
But that gets me into like talking about like the predictions for next week. I think Tyler's going to bring some D7s in. I think that Poe is going to have a cool role to play. Tilly mentions that, Poe, she's working on like these weird siege weapons that I can't even, she's making out to be like, it's something like weird and over the top. So probably something that have like a really cool special effect, knowing the show.
Some sort of weapon that you can only build when you have a metric ton of dilithium crystal lying around,
I predict that next week we'll see Captain Pike do or become disabled and in the chair, or his accident. Maybe we won't see the chair part, but we'll see.
I think that's years in the future is the problem, so that can't happen next week.
That has to happen the same time as the original series season 1.
Yeah.
Or shortly before it. Because that was like...
So this is 8 years prior?
Well, according to Memory Alpha, this is in the year 2257. But if you do the math of like how many times they mentioned like, it was months ago or something like that, it has to be at least in the year 2259, which would place it 7 or 6 years before the original series season 1.
Okay.
But
I was like,
I know that's a longer answer than you asked.
I was like, well, continuity screws, because it just seems dramatically the guy's not coming back next season. What a way to end his story.
I'm sure if they thought if the continuity hadn't locked them in, that was absolutely how it would have ended. But
he could always guest star in future seasons.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
We do get guest star.
There's another possibility I will suggest in a second, but what about I think the other thing that we have to like draw on some predictions for next week will be Calypso. If there's any way, like, will Discovery end up in that nebula that where Kraft was when he landed on the Discovery? Will like his story with like the war with the Vidreish, could any of that tie into the storyline we were seeing here with the control?
I have trouble believing that we have time to deal with the war with the Vidreish. There's so much stuff that's got to be wrapped up in one episode. But I do hope we establish that, yes, Discovery sat unmanned in a nebula for some time so that you can see where that story slots.
Now, if Holly's idea is right that the Discovery might stay in that future timeline for a little bit in Season 3, it could be that Kraft shows that he might join the crew in Season 3, and we might actually like see the Vidreish and learn all that stuff. In season 3.
Now that could be very interesting. I hadn't thought about that until you suggested that, but I was like, that would be
the only objection I have of them staying 950 years in the future for a while is that kind of seems like when season 1 or whatever, when we ended with them going 9 months in the future. So it kind of seems like we've done this as a story of stranded Discovery in another time. But that's the only problem I have with it. It would make sense to me that I hope we don't just turn this as Voyager is with time travel to, where we're in the future trying to
sliders, where there's
an alternate universe. On the other hand, given that this crew is a lot more likable than the Voyager crew, I'd put up with it if they got stranded in time. In
one season
future.
of being trapped in the future, I think, could be awesome.
Yeah, I don't think forever. It would, it makes sense why we never hear about spore drives again if the spore drive gets lost in the future, since the other ship with the spore drive has already been destroyed, and there was a war fought in the middle in there, and now the ship that has it, and especially if Stamets somehow ends up not coming back or joining them, because since he's the one who knows how it works, then that would make total sense why we never see a spore drive again.
No, the other thing I want to bring up, and then I think this is the last topic I got, unless y'all have anything.
I had one thing I wanted to touch on, but
okay. Well, I'll pass the mic to you. Let me just get this out there real fast.
No.
A lot of people are advocating for a Pike show on the Enterprise to spin off out of Discovery. We have Rebecca Romaine as number 1. We have a really cool looking Enterprise ship model. Now we have really cool interiors.
They could use the same sets, just film in alternate time slots.
Well, my initial objection to that was I didn't want to have like Discovery and like a Pike Enterprise show both on at the same time, because it feels kind of redundant. Like, they're both like on a ship in the same time period.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Burnham era, when we had like Next Generation and DS9 and then DS9 and Voyager, they intentionally made the shows very different from one another so that there wouldn't be that kind of overlap. But if Discovery does go off to the future, that kind of leaves the 23rd century time period all to Pike.
Well, given that they haven't even announced that series yet, that would mean that they would be planning on having them stuck in the future for a good amount, like multiple seasons to make that work.
Yeah, I don't think it's likely, but I just wanted to throw it out there. But
I wouldn't mind a Christopher Pike show. Like I said, I really like him.
I would certainly watch. I do echo your feelings that it'd be too much like Discovery and too much like all the other Star Trek we've seen.
But I'd like it more than a Section 31 show, which apparently we're getting.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
But Brian, what was it that you had to bring up?
Oh, well, the one thing I thought, and this is the whole. Whenever they bring in time travel into Star Trek, the rules don't necessarily relate to the rules of time travel last time. This, and technically they're continuing that. The time travel rules in this episode are different than the time travel rules last episode. Last episode, they're like, oh, well, your mom's lost her crystal. She can't keep saving you anymore. You're going to have to live a little carefully, be a little more careful, and we're not going to get any more help from her. And I was like, how do we know she didn't do a bunch of help before this? Because for her, she's been bopping up and down Michael's timeline all over the place. She could still show up and help Michael, and it could be for her still earlier. And I thought, I guess this is one of those things where every time you change history, you create a new timeline. So since she lost the crystal, there will be no more encounters going forward because the crystal's lost. In this, that's how they're doing the rules. Then this week, this episode, they say, oh, well, all those red bursts we've been seeing are for something you are going to do in the future. I'm like, okay, so now they're saying that, they're saying that future time travel stuff that you haven't heard about still can affect things. And I'm fine with either version, but it does seem like we're kind of contradicting ourselves a little bit on which way time travel works this week.
You're thinking about it harder than they want you to.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry.
We're thinking about it three-dimensionally, and really it's four-dimensional.
And I guess if the red bursts came from a successful Michael Burnham in the future, and this could explain why in Calypso there's people around, because Calypso takes place in a timeline where Discovery and Enterprise's mission to stop control was successful. And does that mean that Michael Burnham's mother was thrown forward into a future where they were successful, or did she end up in a future where they were unsuccessful?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Which future did she end up in? I don't know if they explicitly said it, but I got the impression that Michael's going to try to hook up with her mom in the future.
Yeah, and I think we'll see her next week.
Yeah,
I always had the impression we were going to see that actress again. So
are they going to end up in the desolated future or the not desolated future? Because we've already seen the clues given by apparently Michael in the suit, the red bursts, have already happened. So.
And we get there through the mycelial spores somehow.
So. Anyway, that was my one comment, was how exactly are they handling all the wibbly wobbly and timey wimey.
Well, maybe it'll make more sense after next week.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to see.
But if not, we should definitely point that out if there are if we are left with inconsistencies in it.
Yeah.
We just have to accept that the Weeping Angels send you back in time. The Doctor can't go with the TARDIS and visit you in 1942.
It's just a little sad if Doctor Who has got it straighter than Star Trek, but so.
But I think that does it for everything we have on this episode. I'm just going to go ahead and just mention the Easter eggs in here. Actually, not that many, but the first thing I want to point out is just the title of the episode, Such Sweet Sorrow. That's obviously in reference to Parting is Such Sweet Sorrow from Romeo and Juliet, right?
Oh.
It's Shakespeare, but I think it's Romeo and Juliet on the balcony.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, Shakespeare and Star Trek goes all the way back to the conscience of the king.
I'd argue it goes back to Forbidden Planet.
Well, that's technically not Star Trek, even though it looks a lot like the cage.
It looks like Star Trek. It sounds like Star Trek. And I'm pretty
we'll
sure...
call it Proto-Trek.
Proto-Trek, yes. So it goes back to Proto-Trek.
And then the only other Easter egg I found, because I don't want to count every little detail of the Enterprise interior that lines up with the original series, but the dedication plaque on the Enterprise bridge, it actually says Starship class, like in the original series.
Oh wow!
And San Francisco.
See, that's
California.
the sort of thing where I'd actually want them to fix that, but okay.
But it does kind of justify the Franklin being called Starship class and. Star Trek Beyond. Maybe they just called everything a Starship class.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. So.
But yeah, just apparently they haven't came up with the term Constitution class yet for some reason. But yeah, that's a weird thing that was in the original series.
When is the first time the word Constitution class is applied to that ship?
I'm not sure.
Or to that general design.
But sometime before the motion picture.
Was it? They did use Constitution class in the 60s show?
Maybe not. That's odd that neither one of us know that.
Because it suddenly occurred to me, what if the refit Enterprise in motion picture is a Constitution class and everything before that was Starship class? I'm sure that doesn't actually work, but
they've called it Constitution class on Discovery.
Okay. So, that certainly, so yeah.
But,
okay.
If you know when the Constitution class was first used in canonical Star Trek, be sure to comment and let us know, and we might even give a shout out to your comment in a future installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. Just like we're going to give some shout outs now, we have some subspace transmissions in here. On Facebook, we received a comment from Allison Farabee, who, if that last name sounds familiar, it's because this is Dave's sister-in-law. And her husband, Matt, has actually appeared on Tex-Trek way back in Tex-Trek number 3, I believe, when we were talking about the cage and Where No Man Has Gone Before. But Allison says, and this is in reference to last week's episode, "It was so great, I really didn't know they would bring Pike full circle, and his reaction was beautiful." I believe she's talking about when Pike had that time crystal vision of it. That is so cool that we get a really neat Pike arc that was never planned out back in the day, but we get to see Pike on a mission go to Talos 4 in the cage, and we get to see all this cool stuff going on in Discovery, and we know that he will have this tragic accident that's been canonical since the Menagerie Part 1, but the Menagerie Part 2 gives us that happy ending where he gets to return to Talos 4. Discovery's established that he has genuine affection for Vina. And so this guy who does the right thing, who accepts this horrific fate, and it was presented pretty horrifically last week, knowing that he'll be the hero and do the right thing and endure that. I love that it does pay off eventually, and he did not know about this reward, but he does eventually have a happy ending.
I want to see Spock touch the crystal and see Star Trek 2.
I don't want to see that because that would be too much.
All these people dying of radiation poisoning. It would be just kind of a running gag. We should get like who else might have gotten cooked like that could touch the crystal. You know?
And we've managed to make it through the season with no Psylocke.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe season 3. Fingers crossed for season 3. No, I think he'll come in this last episode and save the day. He'll defeat Control
on a D7.
Yeah, on a D7. You know, all these like green Orion girls is like all flocked around him. He's just be like the most badass guy ever in all of Star Trek.
That'll be their cliffhanger ending.
Yeah.
Cybok shows up with a bunch of green women at the last minute, just like they had the Enterprise show up in season 1 at the end.
We'll find out. And we also have one more comment. This was on YouTube from Jeremy Powell. He's talking about the Borg, a possible connection to Control and Leland. Jeremy says, I'm not thinking it's Borg at all. When they show 1,000 years in the future, everything is destroyed, the Borg assimilate, they do not destroy. There will be drones, cubes, spheres everywhere. I have been wrong before, maybe just wishful thinking. I certainly hope that's not what they're doing. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Michael using the suit doing a back to Saru home planet, and she'll be responsible for the red bursts. As for Control, it's like a Terminator vibe. It's been done many times in many movies and TV shows. The computer destroys humanity. And Jeremy goes on to say, and they're not going to be able to blow up the ship to destroy the data. Somehow they're going to send Discovery 1,000 years in the future to hide in that nebula we saw in Calypso. The data is going to evolve and be the AI that we see in the episode. That means hopefully next year, for Season 3, we will get a new Discovery ship refitted to look more like TOS era. Well, Jeremy, some of those things you've predicted have already apparently come true. They kind of have established that Michael Burnham will be the person who creates the red burst signals. Even though that hasn't happened yet, it's heavily implied that it will. I am kind of agreeing with you that maybe this isn't the Borg after all. And I do kind of prefer that it's not, because I don't want Discovery messing with the Borg origin. That's just...
I was actually kind of with you on this, that I didn't want it to be the Borg, that I didn't want Control to turn into the Borg, until I was listening to your podcast last week, and I was like, you know, if it's the Section 31, the analog for the CIA, and they're meddling in their lack of ethics that create the Borg, that is the big symbol of the faceless other that keeps tormenting the Federation. That seems like a pretty good analogy for the CIA creating all these problems for the United States. And I actually really like that.
I mean, I can accept it. I'll accept it if they do that, but my preference would still be just to stay away from the Borg.
I mean, from a plot perspective, it's hokey, but from a symbolic commentary on real-world events... The idea, I mean, anytime you bring in the faceless other in Star Trek, it always feels a little off. And that's why the Borg end up getting humanized through Hugh in 7 of 9, because the whole idea of Star Trek is there are no faceless others. They're all people. We just aren't looking hard enough. And so the idea that the biggest faceless other that the Star Trek has ever faced is in fact of its own creation, created by its own bad judgments and flaws and sins of earlier, kind of feels like a lot of the faceless others that the U.S. is facing these days that aren't really faceless others at all and are largely caused by our own problems and our own bad choices.
I mean, like, it's not a bad story, but just, I hate being like this, but just like from a continuity standpoint, it's like really weird of like, we've had all this contact with the Borg, with what happened in First Contact, with what happened on Enterprise, and then Discovery playing a role in that. It's too much.
I like this. I'm with Brian. I like the story for the allegory, but I also see that it does become a problem that it might not that I ever think nerd rage has any place because it's stupid, but it seems to me that having Discovery write the origins for too many different things in Star Trek could become problematic too.
It's reductivist. It makes the universe small.
And that Discovery becomes the show that rewrites the origin for everything, or I could see that being kind of being a problem if it's always, well, let's go retell this and this and this, and how our Discovery crew they start to feel like a Mary Sue that go and encounter everything.
Well, I mean, on one hand, you're right. It makes the universe smaller if it's all down to the Federation screwing up. And it kind of, yeah. But on the other hand, symbolically, it is all about humanity. Yeah, Star Trek is all about us.
Symbolically, it's beautiful. No, my point wasn't that this one story was bad. It's just that it could become, because it just seems in that Star Trek Discovery then becomes a show where we retold the origin of everything.
Well, I mean, season 4 of Enterprise was pretty much that, and it was pretty good.
So it could be good. I'd give it a chance. I mean, symbolically, if Section 31 creates the Borg, it's a beautiful story, and it makes the kind of statement we need, because the thing I don't want from Star Trek, and my biggest reservation about the Section 31 TV show, is I don't want Star Trek to go around and say, yeah, you know what, goody two-shoes ideals, those aren't worth crap. We gotta have some people that are willing to get in the gray areas and do things.
By any means necessary.
Yeah. Right, because we already have plenty of those shows. That's like every other show out there.
Yeah, but if they create the Borg, if Section 31 is the origin of the Borg, then every single time the Borg show up, that's a giant reminder of why we don't want things like Section 31.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which retcons things, but I think it retcons things in a kind of a cool way.
Yeah, it works.
It would work. It would just be my preference that they avoid the Borg at this point in time. But we'll find out for sure next week.
Yes.
So, James Powell, we'll see if you're right about the Borg, if this is not going to be connected to them at all, or maybe it will be. But I do think you say some interesting things about Discovery being in the time of Calypso, and yeah, maybe we will see it in that nebula. I'm not sure why the crew is going to abandon it, but I think the ship having the sphere data along with Ariam's personality that she left in there, I think that will produce the computer entity Zora that we see in Calypso. So again, we'll just have to wait until next week to find out, but we will be back Sunday to discuss the Season 2 finale of what has been a really great season of Star Trek. And I want to hear everyone's predictions of what you think might happen in that last episode and what you thought of this one. So be sure to let us know, be part of the conversation, and we might give you a shout out next week. Also, if you're seeing any continuity errors, I know we talked about some here, but I'm trying to make a list of them because I'm going to try to explain all of them when we do our Season 2 overview podcast, and see if I can no prize away some of these apparent continuity errors. So help me keep track of those. And as always, live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex-Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.